So,
well, first off, congratulations on the new gig with the paper of record in town, I presume.
Yeah, I mean, Jerry DePaula might disagree. May think the Trib is really the one, but I thank you. I appreciate it.
We have our favorites.
Yeah, we know our favorites here, and they're the ones that come on our show.
Exactly.
Well, okay. Well, if you guys want me to get Jerry on, I'm sure he would be more than willing.
It would be really funny because like we're all like 25 and he's like not 25.
No, he's certainly not. He's
we
old guy, but it's just funny when like we talk to like a basketball player, a football player, or something like what did Bub Means say? Bub Means had kept saying some like
I just
some, like slang term. No, it wasn't even that. It was something like real basic. It wasn't lit. It wasn't like for real. I forget what he was saying, but we had to like explain to Jerry what it meant, and it took us like 15 minutes to be like. And it was the simple. I wish I could remember what it was. It's gonna bug me now.
It'll come to you like halfway through the pod.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and it was Bub Means. So like Bub Means said it in this, kind of like real thick accent with, you guys have heard Bub Means speak. Like it was really fun. I can imagine why Jerry was confused, but
he's unable to decipher the Baltimore accent in the press conference. All right. I got a burp, but I can feel it coming, but it's not. Okay, there we go.
Leave it in.
We're the podcast.
Leave that in.
First down, goes to the sidelines, has a man wide open.
He loves those moments. It reminds me of last year in the Garden against St. John. And guys just stepped up. Blake hits a what the hell 3. We're like, what are you doing? And he's done that all year.
Klicka out to Bizzario. It's over. The Pitt Panthers have upset Wisconsin. Anybody if he hits his field goal. Up and got it. Sauls does it again.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Simplified Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Kaminsky. I'm joined by my co-host, Mason Kling. How are we doing tonight?
Doing well. Last pod we did, I had the football itch. The football itch I have now is like poison ivy. I'm being totally consumed by it. Can't stop scratching. I need football.
Have you been watching highlight tapes to get ready? Are you like trying to like feed the dragon here?
Non-stop. It doesn't matter what highlight tape it is. I just need ball.
All right. We're also joined by our other co-host, Kent Mala Harris, the presumptive frontrunner for the Democratic nomination. Now, he's been on the road lately, but how's the campaign going?
That's a new one. It's been good, man. I've already won 2 national championships with the PITT Panthers on College Football 25, and we're really ready for the season to get started here.
Yeah, you can only win so many digital national championships before you have to actually watch real ball happen. And of course, as you might have guessed by the episode's title, we're joined by friend of the show, Stephen Thompson of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Stephen, how are we doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Mason, I'm all with you on the football itch thing. Like when I'm sitting at home and I'm just working or whatever, I'm writing something, I just turn on like random Pitt games. Like the ACC network like puts literally every single game, like a full replay of it on YouTube. And I've just been like, I'm grinding like Pitt Duke tape from the end of the season last year. And it's like, what is wrong with me? I have kind of a sickness, but I'm just eager to see like a real football game played before. Like you don't really realize how much you miss it before it's gone.
I want to sidebar here real quick because you reminded me of something. One time when me, Kent, and Mason were at Pickles Pub, and this is recently, this is this summer, they had on the Pitt Nebraska Final Four volleyball match on one of the TVs outside.
women's sports are really growing in ways that we cannot even imagine. That's
I actually did like a double take. I was like, "There's no way this is being replayed right now." But
Is
I
that the
will say
one?
the Ace
Was that from
what?
this year or from the year
It's
before?
from this year, yeah.
Oh shit! No way.
Yeah, but the full games on YouTube are so clutch by ECC Network because sometimes I have the itch for the field pass. Like I'll go back and watch the entire 2021 season front to back, just fantastic. And then I'm like, okay, let's watch an entire game here. You know what? This is the episode that we've been looking forward to all summer. It's our 2021. Jesus Christ, that was the.
We wish, man. We really wish.
We wish we were previewing that team. We're previewing the 2024 Pitt Panthers football season, and that's why we've got Steven here. He is on the ground every day at Pitt practices for the Post-Gazette. So where do we want to start with quarterback? Just kind of kick things off here.
Before we get too deep into anything, I want to get ahead of this. It's honesty hour. I feel comfortable with you gents. I think this is, with all the new faces we have on this Pitt team, all the changes and stuff that we have, this might be the season going, like, I know the least amount of ball. So, throw Zach. I know you've been doing your research. Steven, I know, like Zach said, you're on the field for a lot of stuff. You're pretty much everything. Give me it all. I want to pick your brains. This is going to be my session too, to get back up to speed where I should be with Pitt football.
I mean, that's what training camp is for. I mean, this is I had to kind of do the same thing. Like I show up for the first day of camp and I had to be like, "Oh, I remember you from spring ball. Oh, you're new." Like, you kind of refamiliarize yourself with literally everyone else. And I mean, this Pitt team lost how many guys to graduation? They've lost even more to the transfer portal. Like there are a lot of new faces. Don't beat yourself up. This is not a weird looking team, but it's a very different looking team. Like there are whole positions where there are 0 starters returning.
I'm gonna try and get you an exact count here. 33 players either graduated or transferred out of the program from last year. So it's reasonable to think that you don't know a lot of faces going in.
All right. I feel better. That makes me feel better about it.
11 of which were to the draft, or not 11. 13 of which were to graduation. One being Devin Danielson going right into coaching with an all-time graphic, not even declaring for the draft. Like, I'm going to be a coach, which I think we need more of.
Yeah.
Shout out to Aaron Matthews. I know he's a local coach and everything, but we'll get right into it. The quarterback is probably the one thing that I have not stopped thinking about since the quarterbacks were set in basically the top 2 quarterbacks set in stone. The room is of the scholarship players. What would Yarnell be? He'd be a redshirt junior Nate Yarnell, redshirt sophomores Ty Diefenbach and Eli Holstein, who transferred in from Alabama, and true freshman Julian Duggar. To make this easy, we're just going to talk about Holstein and Yarnell because for all it's worth, those are, from what I've seen, the 2 guys who are duking it out to be the number 1 quarterback on the ground. I'm going to defer to you, Steven, because you can tell me if I'm right or wrong.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the weirder thing, though, is there's been kind of – so, Yarnell was kind of established as QB1 coming out of – in January, I think. I think Pat Narduzzi literally made an appearance on ACC Network, and he was unprompted, was just Nate Yarnell is our starting quarterback right now, right? We get to spring ball, it's the same deal. We finish spring ball, and it's the same deal. And Eli, I think played really well and looked good. I think especially in the spring game, started really rough, had a stretch where he missed 9 throws in a row. I'm pretty sure I was looking back through what I wrote from that game last year, or in the spring. But then he really settled in and looked really good. The weird thing is, though, that every time I read a national projection, I look on Twitter and I see someone, saying, "Oh, Pitt over 5.5 wins or not or under," or I see some kind of prognostication about them. Everyone's like, Eli Holstein is the quarterback that gets named, which I kind of understand. Alabama quarterback, former I think top 150, top 100 player in his class. It makes sense to a certain
4-star.
Yeah. It makes sense to a certain extent, but also there's no indication that Nate Yarnell has anything but stranglehold on this starting quarterback job. And I don't know, just to be honest, like the profile I have of Nate in my mind is one of a guy who takes good care of the ball, who makes smart decisions, who's got a decently strong arm, who's athletic, who's mobile. There is just not many situations that I can imagine where Nate Yarnell like hands this job over to Eli Holstein. And I think it'd be really unlikely for Eli to do anything so spectacular in training camp that he's able to take over the starting job. So, for as much as there's a competition, every time we ask Pat Narduzzi about, whether or not there's a competition, it's like, yeah, there's competition at quarterback. There's also competition at defensive line and wide receiver. And, it's like, okay, so there's not really a competition. There's not anything meaningful that if you're reading between the lines, this isn't really he wants Holstein to, I think, push Yarnell a lot, but I just find it really weird that every time I see, a national writer or someone from outside of Pittsburgh talk about this team, it's about how Eli Holstein is pushing for the QB1 job, which I just don't really see that happening right now.
Yeah, to me, I think you're getting at a little bit. It just does seem like a camp narrative, like where they're trying to have, like the way I see it is that it's a totally new staff and it is a very new and fresh team. Like, even though I think me and you both agree that Yarnell is going to start day one. And I'll get into my thoughts on that in a little bit, but they're just evaluating everybody at face value because, fall camp is the first time they have the full roster here and they have to give everyone looks because they need to know what they have. When it comes to Holstein, I think I'm not like being a hater here, but his mechanics are very inconsistent. It's not as bad, but he has what I call Phil Jurkovec curveball syndrome, where it's very obvious. And like when he transferred in, I was really looking at his fucking high school huddle because there was nothing on him at Alabama, which is absolute freak behavior, but I'll own up to it. He does throw a lot of times all upper body. And when you're throwing all upper body, you're not leading with your feet, your legs, and your hips. It leads to more throws where you're just aiming with your arm, and that is more high variance than actually stepping into it and leading with your hips. It's very different, but I conceptualize the same way as shot put, where if all your power is upper body, you're going to fuck it up somehow. Which is to say, when he does do those things right, he is a really good quarterback, but I don't think he's there yet. I think Yarnell's mechanics are much more consistent in that way. Like when he started, he had the same issues. He basically only threw rainbow balls, and then he kept getting better. He showed, funny enough, I was also looking at like the 9 Yarnell clips we have, but it seriously improved from his time against Western Michigan. He had one throw against UCLA in the Sun Bowl. I was like, oh, hey, you might be doing something. And then this past fall, I think his mechanics got a lot better. I think he is very smart. He takes care of the ball very well. He doesn't throw a lot of balls into like dangerous situations. And one thing that I think has been missing from Pitt quarterbacks the last 2 years is that I don't trust anyone to really throw to the outside of the sticks on like outbreaking routes. And Yarnell puts enough zip on the ball to get it there and not put it in harm's way, which is very tough for a college quarterback to do.
Yeah, I think his arm is a little underrated, but I also like, if the comparison is him versus Holstein, it's just given what this offense is right now, like I would feel really wary about throwing Holstein, as talented as he is, even understanding the mechanical issues that you identified. Like I kind of just want the older guy in there, like that might be really rudimentary, but like I feel like this offense is pretty complicated. I feel like piloting it is going to be a lot on whoever's doing it. And part of me just thinks Nate Yarnell is the better guy for that. Like, I just trust him to fuck it up less, honestly. And I feel like that's really all this offense is going to need right now. And I mean, I just think about how many times, like, how many games do they win in 2022 if you have a don't fuck it up quarterback? Or in, 2023 if you don't have a don't fuck it up quarterback. Like, 2022, they probably don't lose that Louisville game. You got more of a chance.
They won 11 games in 2022.
Yeah, like including the bowl game. Like you have more of a chance against North Carolina. You're probably not losing to Georgia Tech that way either. So I think, after Kenny left, I think everyone was kind of obsessed with the idea of, finding the next kind of Kenny and kind of like keeping that kind of momentum going and keeping, I don't know, just finding another Kenny, which is just not going to happen. So I think we've kind of underrated the idea that a game manager per se, more of a Nathan Peterman type than a Kenny Pickett could be really fucking valuable for this team in a way that, we just kind of underrate at this point.
With all the other change, you need like a shred of consistency, and I think that's what he brings to the table. But Kent's probably played the most NCAA with him. What's your scouting report there, Kent? Have you subbed Eli Holstein in at all?
No, I haven't. I mean, yeah, I agree. I think there's no way Nate Yarnell doesn't start at quarterback. This season, at least at the beginning, I think it's his job to lose. For all the points you guys have mentioned already.
So you said you won 2 natties in the game. Every time someone sends me a screenshot of them winning a natty with Pitt in the game, it's always Holstein's court. Have you won one with Yarnell, or how long did it take for you?
Yeah, I've won with Yarnell. I mean, I think they're rated similarly in the game. I think Holstein is faster. So I think that might be partly why people put him in the game, just to kind of be able to run a little bit more, because it is pretty impossible to run with Nate in the game. But he's pretty accurate. Rodney Hammond is a dog in the game. Monfield, also a dog in the game. Kenny Johnson, there's some dogs. Gavin, obviously, dog.
Which is surprising, right? I don't know. I saw the ratings come out. Honestly, I have not played the game. I don't. I have not played the game. But when the ratings came out and everything, and I was looking, I was like, damn, this is some respect for Pitt. What are they, an 80 overall or something like that? Team that wins 3 games being an 80 overall, I feel like that's not too shabby, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's also relative when you have all of the smaller schools in the game as well. To be an 80 as a P5 school.
We're not going to make Pitt good. We're just going to make them be able to beat Western Michigan.
Yeah, Western Kentucky, schools like that. Navy.
Don't sleep on the triple option.
My buddy won a natty with Navy on the triple the other day. Wow. So that's real football. We're not talking triple option football, though. You mentioned Rodney, so we can move right into the running backs here. I think we might have a thunder and lightning situation here with Rodney Hammond and Desmond Reed transferred in from Western Carolina. We all kind of know the deal with Rodney. When he's healthy, he's really good. He's a powerful back. He has some pretty good elusivity and some speed. He has a lot of fumble issues, but I think is his major drawback. He has a really bad fumble rate when he's healthy, but he showed last year in the BC game, when he's healthy, he was the best back on last year's team. But Desmond Reed is an entirely different skill set. He is I want to say a Darren Sproles style player. Would that be a fair styles comparison here? Mason, you're shaking your head.
Well, that's what I was I was thinking of who comes to mind when I think of thunder and lightning duos, and it immediately went to Darren Sproles. So the fact that you said that was all right. That's if that's what we're gonna have here.
He's a very tiny running back who is extremely shifty and lightning quick. I mean, he showed it off in the spring game. I think, if I'm just guessing, because I don't know the offense at all, it's pretty hard to find Western Carolina games on YouTube. I think that Reed gets used a lot in the passing game, especially angle routes and in breaking against linebackers or swing routes, which I think he'll be perfectly suited for. Backing those guys up just for completion's sake, we've got Daniel Carter in his last year, as well as Derek Davis, formerly of LSU, and then a couple of freshmen, redshirt freshman Travius Lloyd, and true freshman Jules Goff out of York. So I know Mason's a fan.
717, baby.
Yeah, I think Desmond is interesting just because he's, I don't know, Darren Sproles was like really fucking good. Like I wouldn't want to hold him to that kind of, I don't know, that kind of standard. One, because I think he's just like naturally. I think Rodney's actually gonna get his touches this year. I don't think they're gonna like bury him behind Sibo Flemister this year. So I think Rodney's gonna touch the ball a lot more. It was like honestly kind of shocking to hear like Pat give like Rodney some flowers like in a press conference the other day. Like I don't know, that just didn't happen last year. Like every time we talked to Andre Powell, he was like, it was not. I'm paraphrasing very very loosely. This is not a direct quote, but he was like, I remember one time that we were talking to him, and he was like, he basically was like, is Rodney actually that good? And we were like, I don't know. It was a little stunning, like walking out of that one. But I think, I don't know, this year they kind of, I think first of all believe in Rodney's health a little bit more. Like you touched on his, I think he was kind of banged up at certain points, certainly in 2022 and also last year, that in ways that didn't really come out. Like I think he was a lot more hurt last year than the coaching staff wanted to let on. But yeah, so I think there is potential for a Thunder and Lightning situation here. I think Reed is kind of in everyone's mind the top guy. Like they really like Desmond Reed. Like they have not stopped talking about him since he arrived. And I think Rodney's kind of coming along too, and it's more of a 1A and a 1B situation. I just kind of wonder who is the better pass catcher of the two, because I mean, Reed is definitely a decent pass catcher, but he caught, 42 balls over 2 years at Western Carolina. I'm looking at it right now. Rodney, like, I think he's a decent pass catcher. I think he can do things after the catch, but he just actually hasn't really done that in a game yet. If I'm looking, let's look at Sports Reference right here. Yeah, I mean, he's got 22 receptions in 3 years. So I think that's another reason why Reed is going to kind of get he'll be the quote unquote starting running back, and he'll kind of get the majority of the touches. But I think it's going to be I don't think we're going to have a situation where Rodney and Desmond are splitting care. Like we're also, because the splits last year were also like, a third to Rodney, a third to Sibo, and a third to like Daniel Carter. Like Daniel Carter played so much last year. He touched the ball an incredible amount of times last year, and I don't think that's going to really be the case this year either. So I'm actually, now that I'm looking at it, Daniel Carter did not touch the ball as often as I thought he did. He rushed it 28 times, which I still feel like is a bit too much.
It's lower than I remember, because I remember seeing a lot of Daniel Carter.
Right. Well, I felt like every game, especially the West Virginia game, I was like, why is Daniel Carter the running back out there on third down? It's like, third and 3 or 3rd and 4 or whatever. Daniel Carter's the running back out there every single time. Like, why?
I'll say there's a reason that the OC and the running backs coach who were in charge of that no longer have jobs at the program. I think that might have played a bigger factor into it than a lot of us thought at the time. I also think that he got hurt. Rodney got hurt in the West Virginia game, if I remember correctly. In terms of other guys, I would, just for myself, I'd like to see them kind of use Derek Davis more, just because he has a very unique body type for the room. He is 6', 205, which is not the heaviest back, but that's like a very big guy to play running back. He's a really cool, interesting combination of speed and power. I know that Rodney and Reed, which sounds like a pharmacy now that I think about it, are going to be the top two guys, but I think that there is at least a third option there if something were to happen. But overall, I do like this running back room a lot. I think that you can kind of get, like you were saying, Rodney can still catch the ball. I think Reed might be better at it, but I think you can sort of get the same abilities from both of them to varying levels. But it's not like when Reed goes in, they're automatically going to be passing it to him. He can also run the ball through between the tackles.
Yeah, definitely. I would also throw out there Jules, excuse me. Your boy from York, Mason. I don't know. I think it's always notable when you hear a guy coming in and they just always talk about his speed. I feel like that was an Izzy thing. We know what he kind of became. Jewels is not nearly as big as Izzy. He kind of doesn't have like Izzy was ridiculous. Like he was a freak of nature in terms of, speed and power. I don't think Goff is the same kind of power back or has the same kind of power potential, but I think the speed could end up being pretty similar. And that's just like that's something you can plug and play like immediately. Like whether it's, whether you just give him a couple handoffs a game to give whoever a rest if you're assuming that you're going to run, if you're going to snap the ball upwards of 50 times on a good week. Like Goff could be a guy who gives someone a breather or whatever. Maybe even like I see these running backs like playing out in the slot, like splitting out as receivers a bunch too. So maybe you just tell them go out there and run deep and see what happens. But yeah, I agree with you on Derek Davis. I'm a little wary of a guy who made a position switch after his freshman year of college, and then I don't know, just hasn't. We haven't heard a thing about him. It's Derek Davis making some progress. He's learning how to play running back, but you think about how talented he was, and he was, rated as I think a 4-star as a defensive back, and I just think we have no idea what he is as a running back just yet. So I am more. I don't know. I'm more of I'll believe it when I see it kind of guy when it comes to Derek Davis. But Jules Goff, I'm ready for Goff. I'm excited about him.
Steven, I have a question for you about Reed. Being in the facility and stuff, has anybody kind of spoken to maybe what it's done for the running back room to have him coming along with Cade Bell and kind of, I don't know, just bringing some like familiarity to the room of somebody who's run the offense? Have they kind of talked about that at all?
Yeah, they have. I mean, it's kind of the one thing that we ask Desmond and the other Western Carolina guys, CJ Lee and Poppy Williams. There is someone at every level of this offense who has run it before, whether it's Bell with the quarterbacks, Darvo with the offensive line, or Reed with the running backs, and then Williams and Lee with the receivers. And I think that's really, really important, quite honestly. I don't think they're going to be able to kind of I don't even know how to phrase it. Like they are not going to be perfect right away, but I think they're going to be miles ahead of where they would be if they didn't have a guy like Reed and Lee and Williams and just people who had run it before, outside of Cade Bell, I guess. Guys who have done it on the field, I think, are a huge lift. You just like there is no replacement for actually doing this stuff on the football field. And the other thing is Reed and Williams and Lee have all like I think they played Georgia Tech last year. They may have played one other like Power 5 opponent. Like they've kind of seen it on the field against similar competition. So I think when we ask them, okay, like where is this offense right now? Like how far do they have to go before you guys are really humming and before you actually are at the level that you need to be? And they can give us a more honest answer about like, yeah, we're struggling with the same things that guys at Western Carolina would struggle with when they would come in and learn the offense. So this isn't out of the ordinary. I don't think they're panicking. There are definitely a bunch of hiccups that they're going to have to work through. But no one – I mean, I guess if they were panicked, they wouldn't tell us. But I do kind of take them at their word that this is just kind of – this offense takes a minute to learn. And so I think they're pretty confident that whatever hiccups are happening right now are fixable.
Yeah, so you did mention the receivers, which, funny enough, is the next position group we're going to talk about. The receivers, kind of you wouldn't think this, maybe thinking about this team 3 years ago, 4 years ago, definitely not 5 years ago. This is, I would say, the strength of this offense. This has, like, there is, I would honestly say, just an embarrassment of hands you can throw the ball to. You've already mentioned Raphael Williams Jr., a.k.a. Poppy, transferred in from San Diego State, or formerly at Western Carolina 2 years ago, and C.J. Lee, also from Western Carolina. They are joining guys that we know, like Kanata Mumfield, Dejon Reynolds, Kenny Johnson, and then sort of other, like, so that's already 5 guys. And then you also have other players vying for playing time, like Zion Fowler-El and Lamar Seymour, as well as like Jake McConaughey got some playing time last year. He is also really tall, which I think is underrated. He is the only guy listed at more than 6'3" on the roster. But height aside, this is an extremely impressive wide receiver room that the staff has put together. I mean, we know that what Kanata can do when he has the ball in his hands. He's great at getting open. Kenny Johnson pretty much broke out last year. He did get a lot of coverage focused on him once he broke out against Louisville. You kind of see it in his stats, but he has shown what he could be. I think Dejan Reynolds was starting to come on at the end of last year, and then Poppy Williams, this staff has been raving about him. He's another small guy. He is 5'10", 165, which is crazy to play at in college, but he is really fast and really shifty, kind of like Desmond Reed, really small but extremely explosive.
Yeah, and I think so. Mumfield was kind of a given. I think everyone expected, him to be kind of the guy, for lack of a better term. He's wide receiver 1 from day one. Williams, I think, has been the most interesting one that is kind of, because he's kind of been the only other name that has consistently, we hear, oh yeah, that guy is always finding the end zone. That guy is always open. That guy can really take the top off the defense. You haven't heard as much about some of these other guys. I think it's kind of a little bit of a jumbled mess for the rest of these dudes in the receiving core. I think Kenny Johnson has a lot of talent, but I think Kenny Johnson is also, you look at what he did last year, and I think he was a little limited. And this is something that I think he would say himself too. This is something that he told us, that he needed to kind of expand his route tree. He needed to be more than just the speedy guy with the deep ball. I think there's a lot of room for Kenny to grow. I think they know Williams and Mumfield will be kind of your top 2 guys. And outside of that, everyone's kind of looking for who else is going to be next. I think that's still kind of an open question. I'm really high on Dejan Reynolds. That was a guy who I thought was going to be a whole lot of nothing when he transferred in. I just didn't know what kind of skills he brought. But I thought he was much more impressive than I thought he would be last year. So I'm high on him. I'm also high on Zion Fowler, a freshman. I think he's a pretty incredible athlete. He's got a ton of speed. He can jump high as hell. He's not huge, but kind of makes up for it with that athletic ability. I think there are I think this is also an offense, though, that is going to need to go 6 deep in terms of wide receivers playing. I mean, last year it was maybe 4 guys who'd feel comfortable throwing out there for meaningful snaps. I think they're going to need at least 6 guys that they feel confident in doing that. Just if this offense is, everything that we think it is, if it moves as fast, if they snap the ball as often as they do, I think Pitt's got a little bit of work to do in terms of finding those other 4, I guess, guys who could fill out the rest of the 2 deep, because right now, I'll be honest, it I think there's a lot of talent, but I just don't think that talent is necessarily translated to a whole lot of production at this point in training camp so far.
Yeah, that was actually a question I was going to ask you, is realistically, how many of these guys are we going to see with the way this offense is run? This is kind of a room that has to be deep. Whether the guys got it or not, a lot of them are going to get a chance just because of how we're going to play this year. So I think it gives some really good opportunities for guys to step up, and then kind of where the rubber meets the road, we'll find those guys to be those kind of set pieces.
Right, and that is also assuming that this offense is what it is. We're going to watch the first half of Kent State. They're going to go 3 and out, 4 times in 6 possessions, and we're going to be calling for everyone's heads. But I don't know. It's I think you kind of also, but I do think eventually they are gonna get to the point where they are going to be moving the ball so quickly, where they're going to have so many guys coming in and out and playing so many snaps that they are going to need 6 dudes. And I think that's what they're planning on right now. I think that's what the coaching staff is planning for. They say, we have 6 spots for guys who are going to play, I don't know, if you snap the ball 50 times a game, we have 6 spots for guys who are going to play at least 15 snaps in any given game. And that's like that. I think that's honestly a conservative estimate. Like I'd have to look at snap counts from last year to kind of compare it, but you are going to need guys who just, and I think the hardest part is going to be for some of these young guys, like you're going to need a Zion Fowler or a Lamar Seymour or a Kenny Johnson to really pick up everything that this offense needs. And I think you're going to have to do a little bit more thinking just about, where you got to be on a given play, what your job is. I think this is just going to be, in general, a little bit more of a complicated scheme than what they were running last year. So it's really just all about who knows the playbook, quite honestly. I think the 6 guys who know the playbook are the best. Those are the guys who are going to see the field.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's going to be like this, but the way I envision it is they're going to have the Pitt defensive line has done this for years. So they just do hockey line shifts and just rotate 4 guys in and out at a time. I kind of envision that the same way with the receivers, just how they have to go all out. I'm definitely with you on Zion Fowler. I think he is the one guy out of the spring game. I was like, all right, I'm hitching my wagon to him. Mm-hmm. This is my guy. And if that take doesn't come true, I never had this take. That's what spring games are for. But yeah, I mean, and you know what? It does help your wide receiver room to have a really fucking good tight end back, because that opens up a lot of lanes in the passing game, which this offense, it does sound very, very basic, but what it does is it just gets guys open by having other guys run around. It is it's football 101, but you're using other guys to create space. They did it beautifully at Western Carolina last year. They used routes deep to open up the middle under, but Gavin Bartholomew helps you run that offense. I think unquestionably tight end 1 on this team, probably looking to get some breathers from either transfer Jake Overman out of Oregon State or his backup Jake Renda, who has not seen the field too much over these last couple years that he's been here. But I don't even know what's there to say about Gavin anymore. He's still really good. He's still a veritable pass catching threat anytime he's down the field. Defenses put a ton of emphasis on him. He's someone you got to account for, and that helps every single other player running downfield for this team.
Yeah, I mean, he's as he goes, this team goes, kind of. I hate to reduce it to that, but it's kind of stunning how he is always the worst kept secret in, I don't know, the ACC, college football. I don't know, at least in Pittsburgh, everyone knows this guy's good, and somehow we cannot find 3 or 4 catches for him a game even. I don't get it. And it's I don't. And for a while, I think I thought to myself, well, is Gavin that good? Is he actually getting open enough? Is he getting separation? Is he? But I mean, the coaches all kind of agree. There isn't there wasn't kind of that similar, pushback that I mentioned that kind of Rodney got at certain points where it's there might be a reason why he's not playing as much. Gavin, I think there's kind of no excuses at this point. You mentioned running back usage being a weird thing. Tight end usage was last year. Tight end usage was kind of the same deal. The lack of production for Gavin got some people fired, to put it very plainly. So, I think you can kind of assume the same thing from there. If I think it's going to be pretty ugly if Gavin, has another 300-yard season with 3 touchdowns or whatever. He gets the NFL Combine, he completely wows people, and he's he's the starting tight end for the, Chiefs after Travis Kelce retires or whatever, and he's going off. I think that's going to be a real bad look, and I think that's kind of within the realm of possibilities. I don't think it will happen, but it's kind of do or die at this point, I think, for if everything we think about Gavin is gonna come true, it's got to come true this year.
He's the player I'm most excited to watch on this entire team coming into the year. I know there's a lot of questions around Yarnell, him kind of being the catalyst of the team or the X factor or some of these receivers that we were talking about, Hammond even. But I think that the flashes we've seen of Gavin, to see him in a real offense is going to be really, really fun and something I'm really looking forward to. It'll be refreshing to see him getting some touches and, you know, maybe some hurdles downfield again.
Yeah,
that was so much fun.
I was gonna say, I think outside of the Pitt 6, the Gavin hurdle against Tennessee might have been my favorite Pitt play since 2021. That would be an accurate statement.
Yeah.
That was sick.
I mean, I'm trying to think of anything else that could. I don't know, like that Tennessee game had a shit ton of moments, man. Like that was, I think they had what? They have 2 block punts in that game or just 1? But they had the Gavin, they had at least 1 block punt. They had the Gavin hurdle. They had Patty throwing, Patty on one leg, throwing a touchdown to tie the game with, I think 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter. They had Izzy running for, a 65-yard touchdown in the first quarter. There's a lot of shit in that game. That was a great game. That they really should have won if Ben Sauls doesn't shank 2 field goals, but not to open fresh rooms. The other thing I'll just add, though, so Gavin did not play the final, I think, 2 games of the year.
2. He got hurt in the Syracuse game. He left that game. He didn't play against Boston College or Duke.
His backup, Carter Johnson, with Nate Yarnell as his starting quarterback. In those 2 games, 8 receptions, 91 yards, a touchdown. Just putting that out there. And I believe he had a 50-yard catch from Yarnell against Notre Dame too, in kind of garbage time. But still, there is I think there's plenty of room to believe that Nate likes his tight ends. Maybe that was a product of the scheme, but I think he will kind of have
Pause.
I was, we heard the hype before the season was, Phil Dracovic loves his tight ends. Frank Signetti loves his tight ends. This is going to work out, guys. But I think this is kind of, I think you can grab onto that. You can say Nate Yarnell does like his tight ends. Nate Yarnell will find his tight ends. There is some real game evidence of that in a Pitt uniform. So, like I said, I kind of presented everyone with the worst case scenario for Gavin, but I think I'm not banking on that happen. I think Gavin's going to have a good year. And I think I don't know. It's got to happen, right? I don't know. I haven't really prepared myself for the notion that he doesn't have, at least 600 yards and is 8 touchdowns too ambitious? I don't know.
I mean, his high for a season is 4, I believe, and that was when he only played in half the games of 2021. I don't think that 8 is out of the question, because I think that there will be no single player on this team that will benefit from the coaching change as much as Gavin will. Gavin has played with 3 quarterbacks who seem to hate him, an offense who could not basically scheme its way outside of a wet cardboard box in the rain, and just completely forgot about him and tried to make him into a blocking tight end, which, if you want to point to one weakness about Gavin Bartholomew, he's not great in the run game. He's all right. He's not great as a blocker, but they were trying to put a square peg in a round hole with Gavin, and now finally there is a quarterback who likes to throw tight ends, a quarterback who is accurate, who doesn't throw fucking curveballs. By the way, Veilleux's completion percentage for last year was worse than Drakovic's overall.
Dude, that was the most stunning thing. When I'm going back and looking at stats from that year, the fact that Phil Drakovic's numbers ended up looking way better than, because even the touchdown to interception rate, man, it was bad. It was it was 7 to 8 touchdowns interceptions for Veilleux, 6 to 3 for Phil. And Veilleux also had 3 fumbles on handoffs. It was not good.
We're forgetting one thing: the eye test.
It's true. It's true.
No, I'm joking.
No, I mean, I wanted to pull my eyes out or claw my eyes out fewer times watching Christian than I did Phil.
Which is it's funny you mentioned those stats, because I felt that exact same way, and this is the first time I'm hearing that, so I'll have to go back and check the tape again, I guess.
It was shocking. I think the reason is because that Phil was I don't know the right word for this, but he was the more outwardly bad quarterback. He was bad in fantastic and hilarious ways. Like, just, I mean, the emotions I felt watching the really stupid pick against West Virginia. You all know the one. I don't have to explain the play. You know the one. You could have powered a small town for a year with the emotions I was feeling there. They were just kind of like bad in a way that was like boring. He was just inaccurate and didn't hit his targets. Yarnell, accurate. And then I will say, I got really off track, but Cade Bell utilized his tight end really well at Western Carolina last year. So that was also another thing that I wanted to get in before sort of moving out of the tight end room. Like Steven said, with the wide receivers, you're probably going to have to play two guys here just because of the rate you're playing at. I would just picking name out of hat. I think it's going to be Overman just because we haven't heard like a thing about Renda. Ken, I'll get to that in a second. You can put a message in the chat. We will get to that. I want to do a little recap at the end here for the offense. Just really quick, I want to talk about the O-line. Many people might not find this interesting. As a former O-lineman, fuck you. I love talking about the O-line. Now, Steve, me and you were talking about this in the DMs a little bit before the show, but it's the way I see this O-line is that they lose 3 players from last year. Like, on its face, it is very much like, wow, they lose a lot of production. It is an addition by subtraction moment for me. And let me explain myself here to everybody. Now, you lose Gonsalves as your starting tackle, NFL pick. However, he went down in game 3, and he gave a lot of starting experience to Ryan Baer, who was not great in his first year, but he was a sophomore last year. He's going to be a redshirt sophomore this year. He's a redshirt freshman last year. So you never expect those guys to be ready like in the 3rd week against your rival. He should get better. Branson Taylor, a little bit inconsistent, but should get better as his next year goes on. You lose Cradle and Zubovic on the inside. Both of those guys were really bad last year. I hate to say it because they're both program guys and local guys. They were not good at playing O-line for this team last year. I think that they do get a lot better on the interior, which is where a lot of their woes were last year. When it comes to who's playing on the interior, I think the tackles are set between Branson Taylor and Ryan Baer. I think they're both going to get better under this staff. I think the O-line coaching last year was not very good either. When it comes to the interior, there is what I call, as an outside observer, the correct lineup, and then there is what I call the doom lineup, which would make me want to claw my eyes out, similar to Phil Dracovic style. I think it's some combo of Ryan Jacoby, who's coming off of injury from last year, Lyndon Cooper, and a large noise representing a 3rd mysterious player. No. I was thinking Terrence Moore as the 3rd interior starter, but you, from what you're hearing on the ground, you're seeing a different lineup sort of falling into place on the interior.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's not something I anticipated. Like, so I think it was last week we first kind of heard as I watched the Red Sox blow a 6-run lead. That's awesome. The thing that we heard, which kind of surprised me last week, was that Terrence Moore and Lyndon Cooper are battling for starting center job, which I didn't really expect at all. Terrence Moore, I think, started the last 9 games of the year and was fine. I don't know. Like, I'm not an offensive line guru, but I thought he was perfectly fine for a
He was better
starter.
than the other guys playing there, I think, is the baseline, because, I mean, while Moore did have some bumps, I think he was better than a lot of the other options they had. He was more consistent. He didn't get blown by or blown off his feet as much. Because he also started down the stretch, I believe it was it Isaiah Montgomery who was starting at the guard role?
Yeah, he had maybe 1 start. I think like Notre Dame. Like he had 1 or 2 starts maybe where it was like, oh, they had a last-second starter who had to sit out, and he jumped in. Yeah, but Montgomery, I think, is the name that you're thinking of.
Oh, sorry, it was B.J. Williams was the other name I was looking for. He was really good down the stretch last year.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to the center competition. It is what you're hearing is a competition between Moore Lyndon Moore and Lyndon Cooper and Terrence Moore. Cooper transferred from NC State.
Yeah, and I was, I think I was interested when Cooper transferred to Pitt. I was kind of like, my initial thought was, okay, maybe they don't think BJ Williams is ready. Like, he's played some center before, but he's also played a lot more guard. Like, he's kind of got interior versatility. Then you got Jacoby coming back. Like, I thought Jacoby was kind of a lock. Up until the moment Cooper committed, I thought BJ Williams was a lock to start this year. Doesn't really – I don't know, because I think the other thing is, I think if Cooper doesn't win the center job, they're going to bump either Jacoby or Williams, probably Williams, out of their guard spot. I think if Moore loses the starting center job, he's just going to be a center. Like, I don't think that's a natural fit to move him to guard. Pat said he could play guard. Like, I don't really think that's. I don't know.
I don't think it would be smart to move him to guard just because he has shown he's a very capable center. It would be better to have him as a backup. So, like you were saying, I think that Cooper, will start. Like, when he was brought in, I thought he was going to be the other guard if Jacoby couldn't go or if they didn't think BJ was ready. I think he'll have a spot at either center or guard, depending on their needs, if Jacoby's back as well, because he's still working his way back from injury. I think BJ Williams gives them a very good option at guard as well. All this to say, please don't start Jason Collier. Yeah. I've never seen a guard get blown off the ball so many times. That it will do it for the O-line before I get mean, and I don't want to be mean. Overall in the offense, year one for everybody here with the program. We should have done this at the start, but it's Cade Bell leading the offense. He's also the quarterback's coach. And then positions-wise, sorry, you got Jacob Bernowski running tight ends and special teams. I think that's a fantastic hire. Was great at Miami of Ohio. Is going to be an immediate impact on both of those position groups. The special teams last year were horrible outside of Saul's. And he even had a down year. Just looking for some sort of improvement to the punting game with him. O-line, you mentioned earlier, Jeremy Darvo was with him at Western Carolina. J.J. Lasser with the wide receivers, and Lindsey Lamar out of Howard with the running backs. Now, the concern for me with the staff is recruiting. We'll see how that goes in the next couple of years, but overall, I like Cade Bell's system a lot. He was calling plays last year at Western Carolina. He got them to the FCS playoffs. I think they upset a ranked team. Do I have this up? Yeah, they beat number 8 Samford at home. They also beat number 24 Chattanooga on the road, a 52-50 comeback win. Like, I think this offense works. I think it translates up. I think that bringing those guys up is really good for getting the offense along. They have the right pieces to just get guys in and get them open. Ultimately, I think you touched on it earlier, it does come down to if they can get Gavin open and if he can be almost a weapon without the ball in his hands, if he gets that same amount of attention. And unfortunately, it does come down to if Nate's up to the challenge. I think he is, but if I have to give a realistic take on it, it does come down to the quarterback here, just because it is such a quarterback-centric offense.
Yeah, I think if I had to put a cap on the offense and kind of summarize it in one thought, you lose a lot of experience, but I think you gain more talent overall. I think that's especially true in the offensive line. To a lesser extent, it's true with your pass catchers and your running backs, but I think it's true of the quarterback position too. I think it's true of the OC too. It's kind of top to bottom. You don't have a ton of guys who have been there and done that at this level before, but I don't know. My feeling about the offense is kind of my feeling about the entire team in general, and it's just that there is kind of no way they can be worse than last year, and I think that's going to go a long way. That's not all you want to aim for, but I think that's I don't think this team's – I don't want to say their goals because their goals are high. Obviously, the players want to win and win a lot, obviously, but as far as fan expectations and what are reasonable expectations for this team, improvements, steps forward don't have to be that large for this team to get a lot better and for this season to be less miserable than it was last year. And I think the offense is going to drive that defense to another certain extent, but it does kind of start and end with how good this offense is.
I love that as being a baseline. Let's just be less miserable than last year.
Yeah. Well, because that was the other thing. So, like, Phil gets mentioned and everything last year, and, like, you rotate through other quarterbacks, but there was just always fucking something going on, like.
It just, wasn't fun. We weren't even losing fun games.
Yeah. There was Boo City. There was the Blue Vase. There was the Notre Dame post-game incident. Like, there was just a bunch of dumb stuff, guys. There was Phil going to tight end. That was another thing. Like,
there was Valari running for 300 yards on us in Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, and Pat coming out at halftime and being like, "Yeah, we had no idea this shit was coming." And I'm like, "All right, well, okay. So what do you do then?" And I was like, "Okay, well, I can finish writing my game story now. They're not fucking winning this game. Like, this is, yeah, no. So it's just like let's just not do that again. Let's get the extracurricular stuff out of there. Let's at least, if we're gonna lose, let's at least keep it contained to the field.
I think we can all get behind that.
Yeah, I think just what you said kind of encapsulates my thoughts. It cannot be worse, just with the additions they've made, both in the coaching staff and their personnel changes. Can't be worse. We're back. We're rolling. Let's talk defense. So, to set everybody up, with the offense, we might not know who exactly is going to be playing, but we can tell you, kind of get a feeling for who might be playing. Sort of the guys competing for spots. Some of them are locked up, Gavin, the tackles and whatnot. Defense is a totally different question. This is where the majority, I would say, of the departures from last year's team occurred. We'll start with the D-line because I think besides cornerback, this is probably your hardest hit room on the entire defense. But they lost 3 tackles, Devin Danielson, Tyler Bentley, and David Green, who did a ton of starting for them last year, all to graduation. They had DeAndre Jules transfer to South Carolina. And then they had defensive end Sam Okunlola and Deion Hayes both transfer to Colorado. By the way, totally unserious. And then backup defensive end Antonio Camone transferred out of the program. I don't know if he's landed anywhere yet. And then just recently, I think last week before this fucked up my entire preview, defensive end Bam Brima is no longer with the team.
Bam Brima fucked up your entire preview, huh?
My D-line preview, because I have been trying all offseason trying to figure out who's going to be like the 4 deep on the D-line. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, he's probably going to be getting one of those 2 spots. And I'm like, who the fuck is playing defensive end? Like, this D-line room is just an enigma to me, because there's so much you don't know, because you had Brima and Nakai Johnson playing to end last year. Nakai Johnson is now a defensive tackle. Nate Temple is out for the year, and as much as I have ragged on Nate Temple, he's a body you can play at defensive end. That brings us down to, I think, 6 guys competing for 4 spots at end, which are Nate Matlack, transfer from Kansas State. I'm super high on him. I think he's going to be pretty good, as well as Jimmy Scott. I think Nate Matlack and Jimmy Scott are your top 2 DNs, and I think Jimmy Scott's going to have a breakout year. That's my hot take here. Then for that DE 3 and 4, you're looking at transfers Chief Borders from Nebraska, as well as David Ojigbe from Clemson, and then redshirt freshman Maverick Gracio, only because he is in his 2nd year, and then true freshman Sincere Edwards, just because he got a lot of playing time in the spring game.
Yeah.
And that is a lot of guys who don't have a ton of starts. I think probably Matlack and Scott have the most playing time between those 6, and it's not a ton. Matlack has the most by probably quite a wide margin. He was playing a lot at Kansas State.
Yes. Yeah, I'm with you on Matlack. I think he talks to everyone, and he's like the guy. He's the closest thing this team has to a sure thing at defensive end. Chief Borders has also really kind of come along. He's been a guy that people talk about a lot. When Pat made his little swipe at Dayon last week, that
I totally missed that. What did he say?
Well, so what he said basically was, he was really hyping up Chief Borders and said he has a great motor, said Nate Matlack has a great motor as well. And I believe his phrasing was, we maybe lost a guy who didn't have a great motor and we gained two guys who do have great motors, which, I don't think that's anything that Pat hasn't said to Dayon's face. I think it's a little petty to kind of take shots like that through the media at this point in time. But, it is not something that no one knows. Like, it has been a kind of common refrain about Dayon. Like, yeah, he's super talented. They need him to kind of put it all together and be a little more focused and be a little more, kind of put it together on the field in that kind of involved effort. That was something like Charlie Partridge said a bunch. It was something Tim Dowse said, I think, right away. And yeah, I think Pat has said it a bunch too. But yeah, living in the present, Chief Borders, I think, has gotten a lot of hype, and Sincere Edwards. I think those are kind of my top three guys. Like, Pat said, I think today, like, yeah, Sincere Edwards is going to play a lot. Like, he's going to play as a true freshman. I'm with you on Jimmy Scott. Just haven't heard a lot from him during camp, which I think concerns you a little bit. But I'm with you. He had an outsized impact in limited snaps last year, so I think he's kind of the next guy that I would think of in that group. But if you made me, put a gun in my head, who are going to be the starters for snap one, week one against Kent State, I would probably say Matlack and Borders are going to be your guys. With Matlack, like, that's an all ACC contender, I think, right there. Like, maybe not first team. Like, that's going to be really hard to do like when I voted on my preseason all ACC team, like, the number of really good defensive ends in this conference is kind of crazy. Thank God I didn't post my actual ballot because I think Florida State fans would have, like, doxed me, like, found where I live since I did put Patrick Payton on there. And I already got them, like, riled up last Christmas when they were, like, doing their whole suing the ACC thing. I thought they were huge losers about it. So they already don't like me very much. But yeah, anyway, like, I think Matlack has a chance to be, like, an all ACC guy, maybe like a second teamer. The rest of those guys, you just need kind of, I don't know. I feel like Matlack's going to play the vast majority of the snaps, and then you're going to, like, have three guys rotating through one other spot, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, maybe. As far as Matlack goes, he comes in with 39 games played in, 7 starts, 14 sacks in his career, 3 years playing in Kansas State. I don't know if he'll get the majority of starts, just because, I don't know, maybe it changes with Partridge, not here, but just the whole time with Bates, they do hockey line shifts. They just are constantly rotating guys in. They're really good at rotating guys in on the line. They'll, even like when they had all those really good ends in like 21 and 22, and 20, they really got guys working there. I agree. I think Matlack is like the only sure thing as a starter. But moving to D tackle, this was like my position of concern moving into the year. And I think I'm feeling a little bit better about it. Mainly because I see pictures of Francis Brewu, who's an athletic freak.
Yeah.
I think he squats like 675 pounds, something like that. Benches, he can bench 225, I think 30 times, I want to say.
I think it's more than that.
It's probably more than that. He made the athletics freaks list as a freshman. I have a hard time believing he's not going to get playing time just because of his size and strength. Joining him, I would assume Sean Fitzsimmons is probably the other one who'll be starting day one. I really like him. He's got a really high motor. He gets off the ball super fast and can cause chaos on the inside. He was hurt last year, which kind of ate into his playing time, as well as, being behind 4 guys who are getting the majority of it. Beyond that, I'm going to throw 3 names at you. I think these are the guys looking for those next 2 spots, being Anthony Johnson, the transfer from Youngstown State via Illinois and like Mississippi State for 2 days. Elliot Donald and Isaiah Neal probably looking for those DT3 3 and 4 spots.
Yeah, that sounds right to me. I'm super high on Fitzsimmons. Like, I thought he would have played a lot more than a guy like Devin Danielson or Tyler Bentley last year if he was fully healthy. I think he's really good. I think he fits more into kind of the mold of, like, a Twyman or a Canty. I'm not, saying he is those guys, but, like, as far as body types, they have a lot more guys who look like Fitzsimmons or Nakai Johnson, or even Isaiah Neal, who, like, play a little bit faster, like, have a little more quick twitch, versus, like, a Devin Danielson or a Tyler Bentley or David Green, who were like 300 pounds, not particularly huge, not particularly fast, but you thought might eat up a lot of space in the middle and just kind of ended up not really. So I think they're kind of transitioning in that sense, like trying to get a little faster, a little more athletic, and that's why I think Fitzsimmons is going to kind of lead the room. Brew, absolutely going to play, Frankie Brew. And
Frankie Brew, that's great.
I just came up with that today. Can you believe it? No. But yeah, and I think Anthony Johnson, I think they're just going to like someone who's experienced there. He's also a bigger guy, but like I feel like I don't know, I think they like Nakai Johnson. I feel like they're kicking themselves a little bit for not having moved him to defensive tackle sooner. But I'm so excited for the year Sean Fitzsimmons is going to have, quite honestly. Like I think that guy's really good. And it's more of a hunch, quite honestly. Like I obviously there's not a ton of film out there on him. I haven't like watched him play a whole lot, but I just think his skill set is going to translate really well. I think he's going to get a ton of tackles for loss, and I think he's going to have a really good season. So if I'm planting my flag anywhere, it's for Sean Fitzsimmons to have a big year.
Yeah, and I was a little bit apprehensive of the hire they made here, Tim Doust, out of Eastern Carolina, but I started digging into his past, and his last couple stops at ECU, the D-line was the one good unit on the team.
Yeah.
And then he was also part of the staff that built up Sam Houston into an FCS winning school. Notably, that had a really, really nasty defense that he was part of building. I think that last year's D-line, you kind of hinted at it, the interior got pushed around a lot. And I think that losing Partridge was a huge blow to the team, but I think Doust is going to end up being sort of a sneaky good hire here, especially with the guys he's inheriting. Like you said, Anthony Johnson is the only guy listed at over 300 pounds. Most of these guys are in the 280 range, which means they are sort of getting lighter. They're looking for that Cansey Twyman build of these quick twitch guys. Like, people forget they were throwing Cansey out at D end on plays just to have fun with it.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if they're going to do that again, because I don't know if they can put Nate Matlack on the inside the same way they could put like Haba or Patrick Jones, but they're looking for guys in that mold. And I think that D tackle going into the offseason was a really big question for me, but I think they've built this room up a ton, and it really has been the emergence of Brewu. And just like, I've not seen this guy play football, but you take one look at him and you go, oh yeah, that's a mean, nasty defensive tackle.
Yeah, I think so too. I think this is like you said, it was a position that lost a ton, and you're just like, it's like I said earlier, like this team I think loses a lot of experience but gains a lot of talent. I think the defensive line exemplifies that more than really anyone else. Like, I just truly do not, like, outside of Hayes, who even, Dayon had 4.5 sacks or 4 sacks, I think, last year. And I guess Oklahoma had 5, but, like, I do not, like, the defensive line was not very good last year, like, at all, in a really odd way. And I just think they're kind of, I think we're going to, wring our hands a lot about, the experience that they don't have and who they lost and everything, but I think they're going to be just fine. And I think also it helps that kind of the scheme is the scheme. Like, Tim Doust doesn't have to, cook up a ton of like crazy blitzes or anything like that or stunts. He's just kind of got to get these guys ready to pass rush. And I think, like, I don't know. I think it's going to look a lot more like a traditional Pitt defensive line, the one that we've become accustomed to seeing for the past 8 years or whatever before last season. Yeah, I'm not, like, maybe I shouldn't be, but I am, like, not worried about the defensive line really at all going into this year. Of all the position groups, like, I don't doesn't bother me at all that they like lost a ton of experience. I think they're going to be just fine.
Yeah, I think the one guy I'm sort of the most upset about losing is Okunlola. I think that guy's like really good. The tackles I can live without. Hayes, no comment. Okay, let's move to linebacker, which is they did lose Solomon DeShields to Texas A&M in the offseason, and they also lost Shane Simon to graduation. But coming back, they have a ton of guys. Now, I am less familiar with how these guys slot. I know they very much fall into 3 different positions, but just at the top, you have Kia Thompson from Ohio in his last year, as well as Brandon George, who came back to the program. Then you've got Kyle Lewis, Braylon Lovelace, and Jordan Bass, and Rasheem Biles, sort of the young guns of the group. Those last 3 were all true freshmen who got enough playing time last year to burn their red shirts. And then I'm hearing really good things about Cam Lindsey in camp as well.
Yeah. So we kind of went over linebackers with Pat today, so this is actually well timed. But I think Brandon George, you can pencil him in as your starting middle linebacker. That's pretty set in stone. He's going to like wear the green dot per se. Like he's going to be getting the microphone. He's going to get the calls in from Bates up in the booth. He's going to be calling them out. So he's like the most experienced guy, and I think you can lock him in. I think you can lock Kyle Lewis in as the money linebacker right now. So that is, I believe, that's a guy who plays to kind of the field side, plays in space a little bit more. He's more of a coverage guy.
That makes sense. He's super fast. I really like Kyle Lewis.
Yeah, dude,
I think he is like a freak athlete.
Yeah, no, we saw one play. There was actually, I mean, it's something I've never done before, but Pat invited us to like stand behind the offense for like an 11-on-11 drill. And Kyle Lewis. So first of all, Rashad Battle makes like a nice pass breakup against Mumfield on like a comeback route. Ball's tipped in the air. Kyle Lewis, I don't even see Kyle Lewis. Like, I don't see him. He's not in my frame of vision. He dives out of nowhere and makes like a diving interception. It was fucking crazy. I think Kyle Lewis is really good. And then I would say, so I think it's kind of between Jordan Bass and Rasheem Biles for that starting spot at star. Yeah. Which is like more of like just outside linebacker, kind of traditional, like, he's going to do less pass coverage. He's going to blitz a lot more. And that's kind of why I think Biles is the guy here. Bass has been hurt a little bit. He was dealing with like a shoulder injury in spring ball. He is listed at 230 on this roster too. And he does not look 230 when you look at him right now. It's really funny that Rasheem Biles is listed at 215 because that does not compute in my head. When you look at those two guys, I guess Jordan Bass is 3 inches taller. Like, Jordan Bass played safety in high school, and he still looks like a safety.
He's also like an all-state tight end too.
Yeah, like Bass looks more like a linebacker to me, and also I think the injury kind of, I think the fact that Bass has been kind of injured and they're kind of slow walking him back into practices and everything has, I think that tells me that Biles is kind of your guy, at least to start the season at star. But the other thing, I mean, like, we're going to sound like a broken record, but this is like the defensive line and the receivers. They're going to rotate a lot of guys in here.
100%.
This is as deep a linebacker room as they've had. Like, it's kind of funny. Pat said today, he was like, yeah, I think about our linebacker room like 4 years ago. And he didn't say they sucked, but he was like, man, we were really concerned about who we were going to have to throw out there. I was like, okay, cool. But he was kind of said that all to say, like, yeah, we can go 6 deep at least at linebacker. And I think they've got Manilek has done a pretty remarkable job, I think, recruiting, the depth here too. Like, I think Jeremiah Marsland's going to be really good. Cam Lindsey's going to be really good. Davin Bruton, I think I'm eager to see what he's like when he like actually can step on the field. I think there's a pretty exciting group of young guys too. And that's also to mention, like, Kyle Lewis has only last year, I think, was the first year he used any eligibility. Same for Biles and Bass too. Oh, and Braylon Lovelace. Braylon Lovelace is going to play too. He's kind of the one guy who I think can play all 3 positions. So I don't really know exactly where he slots in, but he's going to play a lot too. He's a really smart kid. He's like your kind of your Mike linebacker of the future. So yeah, this is, I don't know. I don't think it's a stretch to say that this is probably, like, as it stands right now, the best position group on the team, linebacker room.
I don't think that's a particularly hot take at all. I mean, it is something when Jordan Bass, who I think is like maybe at least one of the highest rated recruits that Narduzzi's gotten. Like he was a top 100 player in I think On Three's rankings, and they're slow walking him back, and they're not really concerned about it because, like you said, in that same class they've got Biles and Lovelace who can both play his position if he's not ready to go, which I think is just shows you how well they've built this room.
This is the group I'm like most. I said I was most excited to watch earlier was Gavin Bartholomew, but as a unit, as a group, as a room, I think this linebacker one is the one I'm really looking forward to on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, they're super smart. They're super athletic. Like while the other pieces of the defense sort of find their footing, they can really lean on the linebackers to help out both the front seven and the back four. So that is, it's really a luxury to have all these guys be able to play. You can get guys creating pressure, and also like Kyle Lewis can just help out in the secondary with coverage because he's that fast. Now let's move to the D-backs really quick. The safeties are set in stone. Yeah. It is Donovan McMillan, Philip O'Brien, and Javen McIntyre. That is the three-man rotation they worked with last fall. Safe to say is going to be the same three-man rotation at safety this fall.
Yeah. The only thing I'd add is, like, I don't know if they're going to be able to keep Cruz Brookins off the field. Like,
so we're talking four-man here.
Yeah, like maybe. But I don't know how it's going to work out. Like, maybe they'll just have Brookins play, like, every snap of the Delta package. Like, I think they mentioned during the spring, like, Cruz was one of the guys who, when they bring an extra DB in, he'll be like the nickel, I guess. I don't know. But he's built like a linebacker who plays safety. He's crazy athletic. He hits super hard. He always has his hands on the ball. So I'm really excited about Cruz Brookins. It's like, again, I don't know where he like slots in. Like, but I did mention this to someone today. I was kind of like, just every day that passes by, I'm really like less and less sure if they are like, is like, I think it becomes more of it becomes less of a ridiculous question to ask, like, is Cruz Brookins better than PJ O'Brien or Javon McIntyre? Like,
ooh,
that's
okay.
I'm not saying he's there yet, but like, the guy gets a lot of hype. And I think every time I go to practice, I see a new like takeaway sticker on his helmet. Like, the kid's good. And I think I'm interested in how much he plays this year. I'm interested in where he plays. I don't know. It's a really interesting question because he just, by all accounts, is way too good to be sitting on the bench for another year.
I mean, yeah, it might be hard to come by snaps in the traditional safety role. If he's sort of that extra D-back they bring in, that could be a pretty interesting role for him because then he's not eating into any playing time from the three guys above him who have a ton of experience because they're going to need that experience at safety, mainly because they lost all three corners who basically played all year for them. That would be Marquez Williams, AJ Woods, and MJ Devonshire, the latter of which was drafted, and AJ Woods getting an undrafted deal to go to the Commanders. They need to find cornerbacks really fast, and for me, I have no idea who's going to play. I can tell you that, to give us some background here, you've got Rashad Battle, who's the most experienced cornerback on the team. You have Timon Lynham coming in from Nebraska, as well as Jeremiah Anglin Jr. from Kentucky at the corners. You've also got Tamarian Crumpley, Noah Bigelow, and Rylan Gandy, sort of as like your, I would say, from an outsider's perspective, I think those are the guys competing. Before we go into it, Rashad Battle and Tamarian Crumpley both wear 15. They both play defense. This has been happening for the last 3 years. How have they not fixed this yet? Well, they are going to be on the field at the same time at one point this fall, and I'm going to break something in my apartment.
Well, Rashad Battle has been like basically hurt for the past 3 years. So like,
that's also true.
So that hasn't been a problem yet. I can tell you, this is straight from the horse's mouth. EJ Borghetti, SID extraordinaire, did say that is going to change at some point. Those two will not be wearing 15 on defense with each other come week 1 against Kent State. When they will actually change it, I do not know.
Did he say who's keeping 15?
They're going to.
Well, I would assume Battle would, right? Battle's a 6-year senior, I want to say. And like Crumpley,
5th year with 2 left. He's class 2020.
Jesus Christ, man. I really thought the 2020, like the COVID year and everything, was going to end this year, or next year. I didn't.
Yes. Well, okay, so he is his 5th year. He's got this year to play. He also has an additional year if he so chooses. Because if you were a freshman in 2020 and redshirted, you basically had like 6 years to play.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Nate Temple has another year of eligibility after this one.
If he gets a medical redshirt, man, we could be talking about some 8th year Nate Temple.
That would be a sight to behold. I think he's going for Cam McCormick's record of 9 years in college football. Okay, but back to the cornerbacks.
Yes. I think you can pencil in Rylan Gandy as a starter. That's been kind of consistent since I think Pat dropped that spring ball, and that hasn't really changed. It's just like you kind of got to take Pat for what he says. Like if one guy has kind of emerged from the fray as a starting guy, I think Pat declared him a starter in spring ball, and then said this week, if you had to ask me, if we played a game tomorrow, I know Rylan Gandy would be a starter at corner. He's talked a little bit about Timon Lynham, which I felt very vindicated by. I thought, kind of going into spring ball, I was like, Timon is an older guy. I love his size. I think he's got a little bit of experience. So I kind of pegged him. I was like, that's, if they played a game tomorrow, that's probably the other guy that I would throw out there. And so, the fact that he's kind of, I think he had an injury during spring ball. I think he was kind of,
you're right on that.
Yeah, I think he was banged up a little bit. So that's the only reason why we didn't hear a lot about him during spring ball, but we're hearing more about him now, seeing him more on the field. I don't know. I just don't know how many guys they're going to need. Do they need 3 like last year? Because, Battle is probably your 3rd guy, but I don't know. Are they going to play 3 corners as consistently as they did last year? I'm not really sure, because I think the depth is really an issue here. I think you have at least 2, maybe 3 guys that you would feel comfortable starting. I'm actually, I'll say I think Rashad Battle actually, if he stays healthy this year, which is kind of a big if at this point, he could be pretty good. He could be just as good as A.J. Woods and Marquez Williams were. Maybe not an MJ Devonshire, but he could be a perfectly fine cornerback in this defense. But beyond him, it is pretty dire. We better hope no one gets hurt, because this could.
Yeah, because the issue with the cornerback room is just straight up experience. It's because you had so many guys who were so good for so long, you just didn't have guys who had any sort of playing experience. Even Noah Bigelow, who's a 4th-year player, has gotten barely any playing time. But yeah, I think Gandy, that's what I've heard, is he's probably the number 1. I think you're right. Between Battle and Lynham, that's probably your top 3, and you're probably just going to stick with them unless shit hits the fan. Especially if they're looking at Brookins as sort of your Delta package guy. It kind of informs you as to what the cornerback room looks like. I will say, if Battle stays healthy, that is a big thing for Pitt, because he is their big corner. He's the only guy taller than 6, listed as taller than 6'1". He's listed at 6'3".
Yeah.
Why are you giggling?
Don't worry about it. We're good.
Okay, I'm not going to worry about it. So that's the team. The only other concern is punter, I guess. We know Salt.
I was going to say, you didn't want to talk about Caleb Junko?
We got to talk about the junk boy.
No, we don't need to talk about Junko. That's another one where it's just there's no way he could be worse than last year, right?
They also brought in the JUCO punter with the Paul Skeen stash.
Yeah, you're gonna have to remind me who that is, quite honestly. Yeah.
I'm gonna be real with you. On my roster tracker, What was that?
Cade Dowd from Baton Rouge.
Right, because on my tracker he is JUCO with the Skeen stat. Okay. I'm feeling good about the defense minus the corners. I'm terrified of the corners. I think the D-line's going to figure it out. Linebackers are great. Safeties we know are great. Corners, pick a god and pray. Let's cap it off. I just want to look at the schedule. I'm not going to give a prediction for record. I think that is just bad juju putting it out into the universe. But let me pull this up on fbschedules.com. So, just going to go over it. Pitt does have, they start off with a 4-game stretch in September. Home for Kent State, at Cincinnati, home against West Virginia, home against Youngstown State. And they get a bye week to end September. They get a 2-game stretch at UNC, home against California, before their second bye week of the season. Everyone has 2 bye weeks this season, which is something to get used to. And then they finish the year on a 6-game run. They get their Thursday game home against Syracuse. They go to SMU. Then they get Virginia at home, Clemson at home. They finish the year out on the road at Louisville and at Boston College. Now, I'm not going to give a record prediction. What I'm going to say is that there's a path to bowl eligibility here.
100%.
I think we did our ACC previews last week talking about all these teams. I'm going to stay quiet because I think West Virginia might be pretty good this fall, but you never know what happens in the brawl. I think that Kent State, Youngstown State, and Cincinnati are pretty good gets in the non-con. You should whoop on Kent and Youngstown, and Cincinnati is one of, if it wasn't for Houston, they'd be the worst team in the Big 12. In terms of conference play, Cal is one guy and he's a running back, which lends itself well to the Pitt defense. Syracuse is starting Kyle McCord, who sucks. Virginia's Virginia. Boston College is Boston College. They're starting Thomas Castellanos, who sucks.
Whoa. Thomas Castellanos does not suck. I take
awful.
issue with that.
Awful, dude.
No, dude.
He is one of the worst quarterbacks in the nation in he throws a pick once every 25 passes.
He almost beat Florida State by himself last year.
That's fine. He throws a pick once.
Nah.
He has a 4 or 5% interception rate. It's bad.
That guy is a dog. I will take no Thomas Castellanos slander.
Now I got to keep an eye on this guy this year. We'll got to see it.
Yeah, I'll come back at the end of the year and we'll talk when he is a Heisman finalist. We'll.
Yeah, you guys need to have a friendly wager on this now.
Yeah,
that's just because you're from Boston, Steven. You don't really.
I'm not from Boston. People make this mistake all the time. I'm from Washington D.C. My dad, his side of the family is from New England, so that's where I get my my obnoxiousness about the Patriots and the Celtics and the Red Sox and everything else. But
you might not be from there, but you sort of feel a kindred spirit with the Golden. The Eagles, and we have to keep an eye on you on that last week in the season.
Well, okay, so I'm gonna have a bunch of families going up to that game, with me, and they're trying to find a place to tailgate. Boston College is the worst tailgating experience I think I've ever seen. It is just not possible to tailgate up there. If you were thinking of going to that game, do not. I would not encourage it because the only way that you can get a parking space near the stadium where you are allowed to tailgate is if you donate $500 to their NIL fund or something, or their student athlete experience or whatever. It is fucked. Fucked. Yeah. It's oh man, why can't BC have a nice game day atmosphere? Wonder why.
That is a perpetually empty stadium. That is going to be late November game, Thanksgiving weekend, everyone's home. That is an empty stand alert game.
Yeah.
On for that team, but I think the only game that I think is really out of question here is SMU. I think SMU might win the league in year one.
Wow.
UNC, we'll see. Clemson is Clemson. They still have a good defense.
Yeah,
we'll be seeing about their offense, and Louisville won't be as good as last year, but they're still fairly good. We covered this last week. If you want to hear more about these teams, listen to our 2024 ACC previews. But
we're going 12-0, man.
All right.
Yeah,
lock it
I was
in.
going to say, Zach might not do a schedule or a record prediction, but I'm with Kent. We're going fucking undefeated, baby.
Solid.
I don't see a loss on this schedule.
I don't see a way we don't make the college football playoff.
I was kind of mapping that out in my head at one point. I was like, can Pitt make the playoff off of the schedule? Like, I don't know.
You would have to go 3-0 against Clemson, SMU, and West Virginia.
Yeah.
Who I think are probably going to be the only 3 teams in this schedule that'll be ranked at the end of the year.
Well, is there a loss that you could take where it wouldn't like keep you out of the playoff? Like maybe at North Carolina, but like you can't afford to lose to Clemson because that would be your signature win. Same thing with Louisville. I'd have to imagine that'd be one of your signature wins. Like, and the committee is the ACC. So like I don't know.
So we talked about this last week. I'm very low on UNC. I think their quarterback situation is really bad and that they're going to fall off earlier than they usually do. Louisville will probably be fine. I don't think they're going to be 10-win again.
Yeah.
Honestly, SMU has a very, very easy schedule. They're probably going to win 11 games this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the one you can take because they'll still be seen as a very powerful team. And I mean, listen, if Pitt goes 3-0, I'm getting very far into hypotheticals here. If Pitt goes 3-0 against West Virginia, like 2-1, you say you beat 2 out of West Virginia, SMU, and Clemson. And you take care of business with everybody else. So I think our mark are like a step below those teams' quality. Yeah, there's an argument to be made. I think you have to win the league still. I think that probably would lock it up. If you lose in the league title game, maybe. I don't know. But you probably have to go minimum 10 if you want to feel good about 11 wins on the schedule. It is not the best schedule in the world if you're looking for SOS.
Yeah.
Sort of pulling a Jeff Capel here, and that is not to be mean. That is just stating facts.
Yeah.
I love that our win total is at 5.5, and we're still talking.
Yeah.
And we're still talking playoffs.
Yeah.
If that ain't the epitome of college football right there, yeah. I love it though. That's why we do it.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to get more realistic about it, like I see 5 likely wins. I would categorize them that way. I think Kent, Cincinnati, Virginia, and Boston College. Oh, and Youngstown State. Yeah. And I think they're going to kind of do the Pitt thing where they steal a win off they could steal a win off an undefeated SMU on the road, just because they do that every year. And that kind of gets you to your bowl eligibility. But I mean, then you're also going to, they might fucking lose to Syracuse, who probably isn't going to be very good this year. They could lose that last game of the year at Boston College. If you're judging it just off the schedule that you're looking in front of you right now and like judging the quality of the teams, I think 6-6 is pretty much I won't say a lock because you can't, but like I would feel really, really comfortable about taking that over a 5.5. But again, this is Pitt. Like I said, like they're gonna drop one that they shouldn't, and they're gonna win one that they shouldn't. You can kind of build that into what they're going to be this season. I haven't, put a bet on it or anything. I probably won't, but if I was to, I think they're going to go an even 6-6, and we're going to feel good about that. Like that's going to be a fine season. We're going to be real happy with 6-6.
Yeah. The way I look at it is they won 3 games last year. They very easily could have beaten Cincinnati. They slid a half yard short to beat, who was that? Louisville?
Wake Forest.
Wake.
So they could have beat West Virginia realistically.
5 wins realistically last year.
They could have beaten Duke too.
Horrible.
Like they had a couple passes like bouncing off of face masks, and they could have beaten Duke too. So like
with a horrible offense, horrible. So if Cade Bell is bringing in anything, hopefully, realistically, it cannot be worse. Hopefully, much better.
We're putting a lot of stuff into the universe that will be used against us. I'm starting to get concerned.
Nobody said anybody's him this year.
Yeah. Sorry, Dom.
But yeah, I mean, if the offense is any better, I think over 5.5 is very attainable.
It's enticing. I think that for me, I'm trying to be realistic. I'm not trying to get myself into a frenzy. Of course, I can go down a rabbit hole and say, yeah, I mean, there's only like 2 games I feel really bad about, and then I can talk myself into the other ones. But
yeah,
I'm trying to not let myself do that. I think overall, you got to make it to 6, and I just want to see the offense work.
Yeah.
I just want to see it work. Like, even if it has some games where it doesn't work because it's still early in the season, if I can see it working, I feel a lot better.
Yeah.
Less bounce passes. More passes to our guys than their guys.
That's the first step.
Yeah. Well, hey, we don't have to watch Phil Dracovic this fall. That is all you got to tell yourself.
Get your best player the ball. We're little things. The little things make a big difference, everybody.
We're truly getting back to basics here. We're like, just throw it and catch it on the same team. You guys can tackle on the D line. It's like,
you see the guys in blue, throw it to them. You see the guys in red, don't throw it to them.
It's just, yeah. I mean, just last year was so comically bad in so many ways. It was like, I don't think it's unreasonable to be like, well, what if we just aren't completely embarrassing, this year? Like that's a fine goal to aim for. That is a fine goal to aim for.
We're gonna go from Boo City to Cheer City this year.
There we go.
It is kind of like refreshing to, not that I don't have expectations, but I think last year with all the buzz in the offseason, there still was high expectations. And then when they drop down, it just sucks so much. When it's flip-flopped and we're kind of like, we have low expectations. If we exceed that, we're ecstatic. We're on a good side of the pendulum swinging here, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was just fun. I remember I brought this up. Like Chris Peak from Panther Lair did. He just made up a list of I think 30 over unders. I think total wins, total touchdowns. There's a bunch of individual statistical stuff for Phil, Kanate, Rodney, and I was looking back at those the other day or after the season. And I was like, man, I got a shit ton of these wrong. I was not even one of them was is Phil Dracovic going to play over 8.5 games or something? Nope. Not even close. Is he going to throw for 3,000 yards or more? Nope. Are they going to score over 50 total touchdowns in a season? Nope, not even close. And I don't think anyone really could have imagined last season going as far south as it did. But I don't know. I don't think we're bound for another season like that. I think I said at the top of the show, but there's just no way it could be worse, right? Even if they are, even if they only win 5 games, I think the vibes are going to be a lot better, and there's going to be a lot more hope going into 2025.
Even if they win 5 games, you'll still know, deep down, they're actually building towards something. They're actually running an offense that makes sense. They're not just killing time until they retire. We kind of touched on it, but the rotations at running back, tight end, O-line, D-line to start the year. Nate Temple started a lot of games last year. Everyone was kind of just not on their A game, and it obviously showed. This year there are players to be excited about, and there's a new staff to be excited about, and there's a new system to be excited about, and there is a lot to be excited about. Even if you're you've got PTSD from last year, which I understand. We did a lot of hyping for that team, and boy, were we wrong. There's just a lot to just forget last year. It's time to get excited for 2024. That's all I got. We have done an hour 40 now on the entire league, and then an hour 40 on one team. I think that's a good balance.
Yeah, I think last point I'll make. I think starting strong is going to be very important. I think part of the reason last year was just so miserable was, losing to Cincinnati, losing to West Virginia in pretty embarrassing fashion to the point of just clearly running incompetent offense. Clearly, at some point, everybody just kind of gives up, and the rest of the season is just horrible. If you come out and you beat Kent State, you beat Cincinnati, maybe win the backyard brawl, start 3-0, like.
Oh, if they win the backyard brawl, I think all bets are off, man. Like then they're going into they're going to their first bye week 4-0. Like I don't know, that would be pretty remarkable, and I think you could start to think about this team maybe being more than just a bowl team if they're able to do that.
Yeah.
But
yeah, we'll get a pretty good barometer of how they play against West Virginia. Like West Virginia lost quite a bit on their defense, but their offense is like completely stacked. We'll talk about this when we get to West Virginia, but they have so much coming back on offense. That is probably going to be, if it's close, it's a shootout. I think
I think we're like 5.5 point dogs in that game at the moment or something.
30 lines.
That's probably fair. Just because West Virginia scored a ton of points last year, and all the guys who scored those points are back. They have two monster running backs. They have their quarterback. They have like 7 wide receivers back. That's a little inside baseball. Now we're talking West Virginia. Can't do that. Sorry. That is the first big test of the season. I think that's your first big calibration point of what the expectations are going for the rest of the other 3 quarters of the season. Mason, anything else?
Nah. We covered it.
Let's play ball.
Let's play ball.
Steven, hit me with your plugs. Where can the people find you and your work?
Yeah, you can find me on post-gazette.com. I also post on Twitter at Stephen E. Tom. It's just my name without the last 4 letters or something. But yeah, that's where you can find it. I post all my stuff there for the most part. And everything's online on the website. I'm in print sometimes too, but not very much. So
yeah, we'll link to all that. If you like the show, we're probably not going to do as many 2-hour-long shows now that the season is starting up. We're going to be weekly episodes will be back. That's going to be I got to recalibrate my life for that. But follow us on Twitter at Simplified Pod. Rate the show, follow if you enjoyed, and we'll see you next time.